Hello guys, welcome back to the D&Nmedicalseries. I'm Damar, I'm here with a brand new tutorial video. Now in today's video we're going to talk about leukopoiesis. Last week we talked about erythropoiesis, which is basically the formation of your red blood cells from your stem cells, right, through differentiation and proliferation by your growth factors. Now in this video we're going to talk about leukocytes, right? And leukocytes are basically white blood cells, and the process of the formation of these white blood cells are of course your leukopoiesis. Now there are two types of leukocytes, as you would have seen in the introduction video. Link will be at the top of this video. There are two types, the agranulocytes, and the granulocytes. Now the agranulocytes, how I remember this is that they end with cytes. So lymphocytes, which are the B and T lymphocytes, and your monocytes are your agranulocytes. Now for your granulocytes, the way that I remember this is that they end in phil. So neutrophil, basophil, eosinophils. All right. So the process of leukopoiesis, just an introduction, it takes about 10 to 14 days for this to occur, right? And for erythropoiesis is basically a much shorter process, which only lasts for 4 to 8 days. Right? Sorry about that. 4 to 8 days. All right. Now, what we can say about this process is that it begins with your stem cells just the same as erythropoiesis, but based on the different growth factors which we're going to look on further down the video, they are differentiated into white blood cells instead of red blood cells. Now there's also a process for platelets which we will look on in future video. Now because the process of erythropoiesis is shorter than leukopoiesis, we will expect that there be a lot more red blood cells being produced as opposed to your white blood cell because of the timing. However, because the process is longer, you will find that more of the white blood cells will be in the process of differentiation because it takes a longer time, Therefore, the myeloid, which is for the white blood cell, to erythroid, which are the white blood cells ratio, or the precursors of them, it will be greater for white blood cells due to the longer time as opposed to the red blood cells, right? But there will be more red blood cells than the white blood cells because it takes a shorter time to produce your red blood cells. All right, so now we're going to look on how the stem cell is differentiated in leukopoiesis. Now the stem cell, it can go to form your lymphocyte precursors, and your lymphocytes, remember, it can be your B or your T lymphocytes, right? And then these will go on to form your mature T cells and your B cells, which are basically immune cells. So they will play a very important role in your immune function. All right, but we look on that as we go further. Now, the next one is that the stem cells can form monoblasts, and the monoblasts under the growth factor M, CSF, right, will differentiate into your monocytes. And remember now, your monocytes can form your macrophage, right, when it goes into the blood, and this has phagocytosis properties. All right, and then the last thing is the Maleo Blast. Now the Maleo Blast is the major precursor cells for your granulocytes. So your Maleo Blasts will differentiate into your progranulocytes, and from progranulocytes you will get your myelocytes. Now your myelocytes are differentiated for each granulocyte. So you have a myelocytes for your neutrophil, for your basophil, and for your eosinophil. All right, so for the neutrophil, it has a lot of growth factor stimulation. So GM CSF is one of the major ones, as well as interleukin 1 and 6. So 1 and 6 are for your neutrophils. Basophil is just one growth factors that is involved in its differentiation into its mature cell, which is your interleukin 4. Of note for your eosinophils It's interleukin 5. All right. So B comes before E. So 4, 5. And just know that for your neutrophils is 1 and 6. Of note, the normal leukocyte count is anywhere between 4 and 11 times 10 to the 9 white blood cells per liter. Now, neutrophils, they are the most abundant, and so we're going to look on the neutrophils first. Now, as you can see in this drawing, the neutrophils usually have between 3 and 5 lobes, so that's something to look for when you're identifying it. Also, its granules are pink. One way to remember that is neutrophils, neutral color, pink. All right. Next, it's the body's first line of defense. So when there is an infection or you get a cut, it's the first type of cells that will go to the area. And so in the first 48 hours of an infection, it's the most predominant. It only has a very short lifespan of somewhere between 6 to 10 hours. It has phagocytic properties, and so as I was saying, if there's bacterial infection, it will go there and try to get rid of it. Also, in exercise, there is a lot of toxins that are produced, so neutrophils may increase when you're exercising. Now, similar to the stages of your leukopoiesis that I showed, Maleo Blasts is the first stage of the neutrophil. Then it goes to the promyelocytes, which is called progranulocytes, which we looked on further previously. Then it goes to the myelocytes, and then from the myelocytes it forms the metamyelocytes, which goes to mature into your neutrophils. So the eosinophil is the next type of granulocyte, and we can identify it based on its bilobe nuclei. So as you see, there's 2 lobes. This is different now from your neutrophil, which has 3 to 5 lobes. So that's one way of identifying. Also, instead of having pink granules and light pink granules, neutral color, the eosinophil has bright red granules. So it's very hard to miss, and it has 2 lobes. Now, the thing that you're supposed to know about your eosinophil is that it has a major basic protein, and this protein is important in damaging parasites, so worms, etc. It also has lysosomal enzymes, which is for this purpose as well. So as you can see, this cell is very important in your parasitic infection. So anything that has to do with worm or other type of parasite, this is important. Also in allergic reaction, this can also be activated. And sometimes when you have inflammation, it can produce fibrin, as you know, and this is important in removing the fibrin. So as you can see, this will go to the wound at a later stage, while the neutrophils will be the first to respond, basically. The last granulocyte is our basophils. Basophils, B, blue. All right, so think about BB, blue. So it has blue granules, and it has somewhat like an S-shape nucleus. So it's like a single nucleus, but it's S-shaped. Remember, the other one, which was the eosinophil, was 2 lobes, and the other one, which is the neutrophil, had 3 to 5 lobes. This is just a single S-shaped nuclei, right? And it consists of blue granules, right? Basophils, blue. This basophil is important. It can release histamine, for example, in allergic reaction, and hence that's why it has the receptor for your IgE, which is the major immunoglobulin for this type of response. When it goes into the tissue, it can form mast cells, also important in allergic reaction. So for like asthma and so forth, mast cells are usually very active in these type of inflammatory diseases. Also, heparin is produced by basophil, and heparin has very important role in coagulation, which you will learn further as we go along. All right, now we're going to focus on our agranulocytes. So the first one are your lymphocytes. Now lymphocytes, they are very small in comparison to the other cell types. They have a very round nucleus with no nucleoli, and it's important to know that when they are when they are metabolically active, they get larger and more visible. All right, so you can have your B cells and your T cells, which are identical basically in terms of morphology, but in functions they are rather different. So your B cells can form your plasma cells, which are important in producing antibodies against infections, as well as memory cells to store information on previous infection that it has encountered. And the T cells, it can differentiate into CD4 or CD8 cells. CD4 are your helper cells, CD8 are your cytotoxic cells, important in tumor, viral infection, etc. The last agranulocytes that we'll be looking on is our monocytes. And our monocytes, you can identify them based on their kidney-shaped nucleus. And the cell of the monocytes are usually larger than the typical ones. They are important in that they produce macrophage when they enter the blood, or they differentiate into macrophage, which is important for phagocytosis, getting rid of damaged cells, etc. Plays a very important role in this. And there may be different types of macrophages depending on where they are in the body. Now, the last thing that we're going to look on is a few pathology of your white blood cells. So you can have leukocytosis, which means there's an increase in the number of white blood cells. Remember, we said that the normal range was from 4 to 11. So once you have greater than 11 times 10 to the 9 white blood cells, then you will have leukocytosis. Now, causes of this, remember, exercise can increase your neutrophil levels. So in severe exercise, if there's a fever, or you have an infection, or you're pregnant, this can also cause an increase in your white blood cell count. Now, in leukopenia, now it's quite the opposite. So it's where your white blood cell level, it falls below 4. And this is basically as a result of malnutrition and starvation, of course. You may be on certain medications such as sulfamides, or you may be deficient in vitamin B12 and folic acid, which is very important for DNA synthesis. That's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Goodbye.